Hey, thanks for joining me. My name's Carolina Zapata. I'm the creator of Carolina Wellness, and I'm glad you're here with me. Today, I wanted to talk with you a bit about mindful consumption and building a healthier relationship around food. At a later date, I will be speaking to somebody, a licensed therapist that specializes in substance abuse as it relates to drinking as we kind of go into January and people have kind of New Year's resolutions around food and drinking. But today I will be focusing on food. That being said, I'll give you a little bit of information on Carolina Wellness and my approach, um, and why I do these talks, and then I'll jump right into what you will need to know. So, I created Carolina Wellness because I had challenges of my own throughout the years. One of which was I was a binge eater in my 20s whenever I got out of college. It was a time of transition and it was really stressful for me. And my relationship with food for a few years was less than desirable. Let's put it that way. Um, and for a while, I was kind of in denial about it. And then over time, I really started to question my relationship with food and use what I call the SMILES approach to help myself. I highly recommend getting professional help if your relationship with food isn't what you want it to be. In my case, I was able to get myself out of that situation. Um, and so the techniques that I used are some that I will explain today in terms of getting to know yourself and understanding your behaviors, and then in understanding yourself better, that way you can make different choices later on. And I think the why is really important until you kind of answer that question of why you have the negative patterns with food or a negative relationship with food. It's going to be difficult for you to move forward. So my approach is starts with self-awareness. And so you get to understand yourself, you build on your strengths, and you find areas for improvement. And then from there, you get a deeper understanding of what's holding you back and what's keeping you in negative patterns through mindfulness. And for me, the definition of mindfulness is just noticing what's going on with yourself, being present, and being aware. So it's the opposite of autopilot, if you will. From there, you're able to make intentional actions. You have the right information. You know yourself. You start to understand your triggers and what's holding you back. And then you can more confidently make informed decisions and take different actions. That is the process. And then finally, support. If you are surrounded by people that support you, love you, care about you, are a good influence, that's going to be a lot easier for you to change your bad patterns and behaviors versus surrounding yourself with people who bring you down, don't care about your behavior, or enable you in some way. So we'll talk a little bit more about some of these aspects, but that's really the foundation for kind of the education that I bring forth. So I did want to call that out before we talk about the topic. So let's see. Let's jump right in here. All right. So, it's the holidays, and this can be an interesting time for anyone in terms of overconsumption and treating yourself a little bit more than you normally would. Maybe you're kind of in vacation mode. And maybe it's just temporary. Maybe it's just around the holidays that you need a little extra support. Then there's some of us that just have a complicated relationship with food and need more support year round at different times. Again, it may be just a phase in your life that is difficult. If you're in a time of transition, if you are having trouble at work, you're having trouble personally, and food is what you turn to. I have included a exercise here to kind of start to get you to think about, all right, well, what is my relationship with food? And think about, do I think about food as fuel, or do I use it as comfort? If I do use it as comfort, when do I begin to have that emotional reaction that leads me to want to eat? And these questions can be used just in a journaling practice, or, you visit them every once in a while to kind of check in with yourself and see if you have positive or negative associations with food, and start to notice how you feel during meal times. Notice how you react in different scenarios where food is present, but maybe you're having an emotional reaction, such as social gatherings. It's pretty common for people to react to being uncomfortable or anxious to reach for some extra food. This year may be a little bit different just because we're not having as many social gatherings because we're still in a pandemic, but moving forward, something to kind of keep in mind. And maybe you're gathering with just a couple of friends and family and you love them, but they still cause you to get anxiety or stressed out and cause you to eat. So hopefully the exercise is helpful in just kind of getting you started and thinking about food differently and getting curious about your particular relationship with food. I think everybody's is going to be a little bit different. And you can even write your own questions and think about just becoming a detective on how you are relating to food. These are just there to help you get started. So I'll let you review those on your own. Those would also be appropriate if you have a meditation practice and you just want to sit quietly and contemplate those, or even if you're going for a walk and that's kind of your quiet time. Kind of run through those in your head as you check in on yourself. All right, so how do we take these principles of self-awareness and mindfulness and use them to develop better habits? Well, again, I like to start with the why behind why we do certain things, because I think that, again, the root cause is really important in understanding our behavior. So, first and foremost, we're social creatures. We literally are biologically wired to have meal times be a bonding ritual with others. There's a lot of cultures where meal times are really important. This is the only time we have with loved ones. We come together. It's great. However, studies have shown that we consume 48% more when eating with others. 48% more. That's kind of a lot. There's a couple things here. One, I think you're distracted. You're with other people, you're chatting, you're in the moment, it's great. You're, again, kind of on autopilot. So you're not paying attention to your body and your cues that are telling you that you are full. You're paying attention to the environment and you're watching other people eat, and you're not other people. So some people may need more food than others. I know that, like, if I go out to eat with a group of guys, I'm like, I can eat a lot, but I do end up eating more depending on who I'm with, because I'm like, oh, they're still eating. Well, I should be eating too. And this is also a survival mechanism, and it's also biological. So even back in the hunting gathering days, we would share resources in order to stay alive. So when we're eating with others, kind of that biological survival instinct kicks in and says, you need to eat now because otherwise there might not be food later. And like, times have definitely changed, but that is still our mentality. So just kind of a fun fact there. And then besides social, we overeat and consume things that we have no business eating because it's bad for us, because we use food as a coping mechanism. We use it to self-soothe. We use it for comfort. Now, here's the tricky part. We are wired to have an urge-reward system that's related to food. So when we eat food, it releases the feel-good chemicals of dopamine. Our body is like, yay, you ate food, and you feel great about it. Now, biological systems can work for us or against us. I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into this urge reward system and what you have to kind of be on the lookout for. Because, yes, our body tells us what we need. Our body tells us when we're hungry, when we're not hungry. Our body, I always say, like, listen to your body. But what if your body is giving you conflicting information, right? Like, we get these feel-good chemicals and we're like, oh, I ate, this must be good, right? But it's a little more complicated than that. And sometimes we don't have a great sense for what true hunger is. Like, sometimes we can mistake hunger for other things. For example, thirst. If you're dehydrated, sometimes your body will try to give you signals that you're dehydrated, and you confuse that for being hungry. So being in tune with your body is also pretty important there. Now, let's talk about what you can do to be more aware, to break the cycle, and to start to understand yourself a little bit better. Step 1, gain awareness that we are vulnerable to this urge reward system. I mean, that's kind of just a step 1, right? And even just in listening to me talk, and even just doing your own research of why is this happening to me, reading articles, things like that will help, is step 1. Like, you're no longer in denial that it's not happening. You understand that your body can sometimes be confusing, and you can't just blindly trust your body, which is kind of a weird thing to think about. In the book, The End of Overeating by Dr. David A. Kessler, he says, quote, we have to mistrust our brains. And I do think the interpretation of this is that all of our thoughts are not always factual. And again, our bodies can sometimes confuse us if we're not aware of what's going on here. An example of that would be when we consume sugar, fat, and salt, we want more sugar, fat, and salt. And it's not that those things are bad for us. Everything in moderation. However, those are the most addicting things. That's why we want more of them. And in excess, those are what's going to be the worst for us. So many different diseases and over time, sugar, fat, and salt result in, heart disease, stroke, diabetes, lots of risk factors for us to be really, really sick. So something to be mindful of. And I know for me personally, I struggle with sugar. And I do notice that when I have more sugar than I need, I crave more sugar. And it's like this endless, insatiable monster of wanting more sugar. So I can't just, in that case, I can't trust my thoughts or my body to know what's best for me. I kind of have to override the system and say, hey, I know that my body doesn't need this much sugar. You just got to be honest with yourself. So sometimes you'll catch yourself in that cycle, in that urge reward kind of trap. And remember that you have a choice. Next one, identify and notice your triggers. So when I say trigger, I mean that you're feeling a certain type of way, emotionally, physically, etc. Are you stressed? Are you bored? Are you upset? So those would be times when you're going to feel triggered to want the reward. In other words, to want comfort or relief from what you're feeling. And you need to be conscious of these triggers. It won't happen immediately. So my suggestion is that in the moment, as it happens, you over time will start recognizing what these are. You can either write them down, you mentally note it, but you will start catching yourself once you're paying attention. And you will think, oh my gosh, I had a bad day. I really just want some sugar. Or I had a really bad day. I just need some comfort food. I need a cheeseburger. This is what's going to make me feel better. And then you'll notice that you have kind of conditioned yourself in this way. So step one, again, you're getting awareness. You're realizing that this is even a cycle that you're in. Step two is you will identify and notice your triggers. You're going to start realizing when it's happening. Cool? You with me? All right. Step three, you're going to question the reward and you're going to be curious about whether or not the outcome of that reward is what you truly want. Is it worth it? In the moment, over-consuming, binge eating, eating crappy food, junk food, feels good, right? You get that instant gratification. You get that reward. You get the dopamine that comes along with it. Your body's like, cool, yep, I just ate, feels so good. But then, if you overdo it, you might, a couple hours later, have a stomach ache, not feel so great. Maybe 24 hours later, you start to, have swollen ankles, maybe you have diarrhea, you feel guilty because you ate what you said you wouldn't eat. You promised yourself you weren't going to do it again. And so emotionally, it's kind of taxing sometimes of, damn, I overdid it again. So both physically, tummy ache, whatever, and both emotionally, you'll see that that was the outcome. And so you question the reward. Was that instant gratification worth the outcome overall? And here's an example. So for me, I struggle with sugar. And so in the moment, I want sugar, and then I eat it, and I feel great. I get the sugar rush. And then maybe like an hour later, I don't feel so great. Like my stomach feels funky, and sometimes I get a headache. And then the next day, I typically break out because my body is really sensitive to what I put into it, and I'm in my 30s, so My body just isn't as resilient as it used to be. And then I have stiff joints and inflammation. And so for me, I've decided that it's no longer worth it. I've noticed this pattern in myself, and for me to feel like crap the next day is not worth the instant gratification of all the candy that I indulge in. And maybe you find that once you start to think about the reward and the true outcome of your actions, you see that you don't really care about the reward as much as you thought you did. You prefer to feel good about yourself, to not feel guilty, to not kind of have that weighing on your shoulders. Another thing to think about with questioning the reward and the outcome is there another way you can get the initial reward? So remember, the reason why we're over-consuming, the reason why we're treating ourselves to this comfort food is that we had, there's something prompting us to do it. We were stressed, we were upset, we were bored, right? So what if when we're upset, bored, etc., what if there's a way that we can get our needs met and we can feel relief and get the reward without it being associated with food? So for me, I have a dog. He's the cutest. His name is Huxley. And petting my dog often is soothing for me and my anxiety. Calling a friend, hugging someone. Ooh, that's a good one. Like hugging your spouse, your child, etc. can give you the same feeling of relief that you need. And so you're just switching it up. You're just doing something different. Can you get the reward without the food? Which brings me to my next point of replacing a bad habit with a healthier one. So James Clear has this book about atomic habits, and since we're talking about negative habits right now, James Clear and other experts have shown that it's easier to replace a habit rather than eliminate it. So don't even focus on the bad habit. Focus on a new habit that's healthier. I'm going to put it all together in this example. All right, so I had an eating disorder, or even now, sometimes if I want to comfort myself. When I was stressed, I like to binge eat, right? That's how I found my relief. When I found the sensations coming on, because I could feel it, I'm like, ooh, I have that urge. I really want to eat because I'm stressed out. I would direct my attention to something else. I would go for a walk because I don't have access to food if I'm not in the house. And then I'd call a friend because that's distracting me. It's getting my mind off of not thinking of food. Because if I just repeat to myself, don't think of food, don't think of food, don't think of food, you're still thinking about food. Then after about 30 minutes or so, I was not thinking about it. This would stop the craving, and it worked for me. Then I introduced a new habit as well. So usually my sugar cravings specifically would happen after a meal. So instead of saying I'm cutting out sweets, I simply said I'm going to start drinking tea. So after meal times, I drink spearmint tea or whatever, lemon tea. That kind of clears the palate. It's a new ritual for me. So now like when I stop eating, I think in my head like, ooh, it'd be nice to have a cup of tea. So I've now conditioned myself to want that, expect that. So yeah, help yourself kind of have better options and just develop new, healthier habits that won't make you feel guilty afterwards, that will, just make you a little bit healthier, one step at a time. Then, also, I'll have to add, when you help yourself have better options, you're more likely to succeed. So, stop buying the treats. Don't have them in the house. You're making it harder for yourself to have these bad habits. All right, the last piece of the puzzle is accountability and support. Woo, this is a big one, y'all. You sometimes don't even realize how much other people influence you until you're surrounded by the right people. Find an accountability buddy. Reach out to a health coach. Me. Join some Facebook groups. I have one, by the way, on Carolina Wellness. Join a health club and ask if they have any sort of online meetups or online groups. It's a pandemic, so, in person is hard. Church groups, whatever. Book clubs with your friends. Anything that will be a positive influence on you changing your habits to be healthier habits. I say this because a lot of the times we don't realize that we're doing stuff just because other people are doing it, and it's so hard to do it on your own. It's so much easier to do it when you have the support of your family, your friends, etc. So do not underestimate that, and take the time to figure out who's going to be the right accountability and support for you. When it comes to specifically to gatherings and holiday functions, whatever, if events are the kind of thing that spark this problem in you or trigger you, I have a couple more tips for gatherings and social situations. So before you head out, get mentally prepared. Literally give yourself a pep talk, set intentions for yourself, and remind yourself of what's really important. Remember that you have these longer term goals and then you have instant gratification. Don't give in to that instant gratification. Give yourself a pep talk. Eat a healthy snack before you go. If you're starving, you're not going to be snacking on all this junk that's there. Because let's be honest, there's usually a lot of junk at gatherings. Stay present. Notice your thoughts and behaviors. Again, if you're the type of person where social anxiety makes you want to eat more, what can you do instead? Drink a bunch of water. Excuse yourself for a moment. I don't know what it is for you specifically, but notice your thoughts and behaviors and don't get on autopilot. Listen to your body. Eat slowly. Sometimes it takes like 20 minutes for your body to even realize that you're full. If you're eating slowly, I'm guilty of this too. If you're eating slowly, you will allow your brain and your tummy to be in sync and talk to each other. You're like, oh, okay, I'm full. If you're scarfing food down, it's harder for you to realize that this is going on. All right, so if you feel emotional eating coming on, take a few deep breaths. This will reset your nervous system. This is great. You can do this like at any time. Breath work, just taking a couple of deep breaths, really helps you just kind of jump back into your body and pay attention to what's going on and stop that urgency impulse. I once heard that if an apple sounds good to you, you're actually hungry. Maybe that's a good litmus test to keep in the back of your mind. All right, final thoughts before I let you go. Don't beat yourself up about it. Think of this as a work in progress. I'm going to be honest with you. It took me 2 years to stop being a binge eater and get my shit together. And I mean that in the most loving, compassionate way for myself and for you as well. I want what's best for you. I want you to have a healthy relationship with food. Food is awesome. We need it for survival. Food is not good or bad. We just have to be a little more conscious about what we put into our body and take this seriously. You know, once you kind of get down this rabbit hole, it's really hard to get out of it. And again, I think self-awareness and mindfulness are going to be a great tool for you as you work through this. And just remember, there are serious risks to overeating and eating junk over time. You and your family do not want you to, start to get depressed because you're gaining weight, start to really affect your health in terms of heart disease, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and over time, over-consuming food can lead to brain changes and memory loss, which is pretty crazy. But our bodies can only take so much, Our bodies are actually really resilient, really awesome. But there's only so much abuse it can take. And truly, if you're over consuming, your body's having such a hard time digesting all of that food. It's using up so much energy trying to process that you're not doing yourself any favors. Think about how much better you're going to feel when you just think of food as fuel and don't overdo it all the time. All right, with that, I'm going to leave you. I hope this was helpful. I'm also going to post links to those 2 books that I mentioned. And remember that it's a work in progress, and you're not quite there yet doesn't mean you're not going to get there.